Good afternoon, everyone. We are Group 2 and we will be discussing the puzzles about art, specifically case number 4 and number 5.
Pulling poetry out of a hat.
Pulling poetry out of a hat short summary. Zara creates poems by deconstructing Shakespeare's work and picking words at random to create their own poem. A 7-year-old daughter tried to attempt the same thing by cutting words from the 18 sonatas to create her own.
Upon reading the puzzle, we as a group were able to identify the problem of does rearranging the words in someone's poetry count as original and your own? Now, while words themselves have a dictionary meaning that literally explains what the word means, these words hold no emotion unless someone gives them emotion. The whole poem was deconstructed and each word were divided into a single piece of the word that has no definite meaning or sense. The words were then randomly chosen and once again were put together to make a new meaning different from the original. When Tristan Tzara deconstructed Shakespeare's work and started picking words at random to create their own poem, people questioned if this could be counted as original work. When he did this, all he took were the words from Shakespeare's poem. With these words, he was able to create an entirely new poem with a different meaning and different emotions. He was able to convey an entirely different message with these words, even though he took them from someone else's work. It is entirely original.
This type of poetry is called Dada poetry. Although current Dadaist poetry has drifted from the movement's original goal of making an anti-war statement, Dada poetry is a poetic form that adheres to the traditions of the Dadaist movement. The founders of Dadaism may not have considered their work to be art because it was intended to be more of a political statement than an artistic movement during the World War. The sentiment was nevertheless so strongly felt that it crossed national boundaries and turned into a global phenomenon. Their aim was to serve no function other than to highlight the shortcomings of human understanding. Dadaist poetry was generally deliberated through primitive chance operations rather than by carefully selecting words, since they were meant to be chaotic and ludicrous. There may be different perspectives and endless debates if Dadaism should be considered as poetry, but truly, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Some people might see Dadaism as art, while others might see it as a form of anarchy. Ultimately, it's up to the individual to decide what they see in Dadaism, whether it's creative adaptability or its empowerment of the individual. Nevertheless, Dadaism emphasizes accepting the chaotic true form of the world as it is without trying to rationalize or apply human logic to it. Dadaist poem and Zara's method are also known as a cut-up method. To start, one must have a reading material, whether book, magazine, or newspaper. Then, get a pair of scissors and select an article that is long enough to serve as a foundation for your poetry. The article must next be cut out, followed by the individual words that compose it, which must all be placed in a bag. The bag will then be shaken thoroughly to combine all of the paper fragments. When finished, remove the scraps one by one in the order that they appeared in the bag. After that, if you meticulously transcribe it, the poetry will be just like you. Zara also stated that from there, you're a writer, infinitely original and endowed with a sensibility that is charming, though beyond the understanding of the vulgar. The essence of Zara's original formula can be summed up as subjecting a previously written text to the rules of chance, which strips the text of its original meaning and leaves it to new ones.
Both would be considered original since they both give different messages and evoke different emotions from the reader, completely unrelated to the original composition where they were derived from. As generally characterized by Dada poetry, the audience doesn't experience the same emotions or get the same messages from such poetry, and those emotions and messages they get are entirely different from the original one. Although both borrow from an original poetry, they both nonetheless resulted in new and completely different versions of the original one. Similar to any research done by a particular author, which would be considered original even though it uses other sources as long as no plagiarizing was done.
Modern masterpiece, just ducky. So, to give you a gist for this case, I will be explaining to you this quick summary. During the late 1989 in England, specifically in Liverpool, there was a wine merchant named Maureen Gledhill went to the shop of Ernest Cleverly, who is a sculptor and also runs a pet shop. She saw Cleverly with Brian Borges, who is an artist, discussing about the picture, and Miss Gledhill assumed, or might I say believed, it was made by Brian Borges. So she bought the painting for $105 and displayed it in her home. But only to find out the painting done was a Cleverly's duck named Pablo. You see, Pablo the duck escaped from his cage and got paint on his feet, and to be honest, surprisingly made an interesting pattern. However, Miss Gledhill no longer displayed the painting at her home, but she said some good remarks to Cleverly, and I quote, "I know it sounds corny. I don't know much about art, but I know what I like, and this was a painting I liked."
So does one need to be knowledgeable in arts in order to enjoy it? Well, to answer the question, I will be returning with another question. Did it pique your interest? Because if so, then that's all you need to enjoy art. After all, curiosity leads to many imaginations that the human brain can think of. You don't have to be limited with what's in front of you in order to enjoy it. As a well known saying goes, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. One's instinct, faith, and beliefs can alter one's perception of a subject, and when those converge with another person, and eventually a group of people, it becomes the point where a common ground is established, and that is the time when a subject's value is cemented. When Glendale saw the painting, her perception of it was that it was a masterpiece because she believed it to be, whereas the owner of the painting thought it wasn't. To him, it was just a painting. He knew it was created by a duck that stepped on the canvas effortlessly. Different perspectives can lead to different interpretations of a subject. Everyone can view the same subject, yet arrive at different conclusions, and that is the beauty of art.
In analyzing the puzzle, the group determined that it raises another issue. It asks us, the readers, if art should be separated from the artist. Why did Miss Glenhill remove the painting from her house? Her actions bring up the topic of whether art should be separated from the artist by highlighting the concept of essentialism. The painting made by Pablo the Duck was considered art by both Glenhill and Cleverly, as both recognized the talent of the duck to produce a painting. Some aspects of the art were considered by both Glenhill and Cleverly, which led the two to consider the painting as art. So simply put, it looked pleasing to the eye for both of them, which is why they considered it as an artwork. However, when Glenhill found out about the true author of the painting, she stopped showing her artwork at her home. If she never found out about the author, would she still have kept the painting? So this point brings us to our essential point. Art truly is subjective. An important aspect of what makes art intrinsic is its context. In the case of the puzzle, the painting was made by a duck. Should the work of Pablo the duck be discounted just because the author is an animal? Or perhaps did Miss Glenhill remove the painting because she was embarrassed that she falsely believed the painting was made by a known artist? Our group's guess is that she probably would have kept the painting had she not known. But even if she did know the author of the painting, Glenhill should have kept displaying the painting because there is clear value in the painting, as said in the previous point.
So in conclusion, the group was able to explore concepts on existing forms of art, such as poetry through Puzzle 1-4 and artworks through Puzzle 1-5. From these puzzles, we've investigated what constitutes as poetry by examining whether the rearrangement of poetry counts as a distinct form of poetry from the original piece, which was defined as Dada poetry. And in terms of artworks, the concepts of the audience perception in art and the separation between the art and artist were also scrutinized. All in all, the aforementioned topics allow the group to have a better understanding on the essence of what makes art intrinsically unique from each other. It may differ due to different purposes or perspectives from both the artist and the audience.
So thank you for watching.